They did not want an automation system where AI is an afterthought. It needs to be baked right into the architecture. Our strategic goal is to make it as simple as possible to start taking advantage of the automations without even knowing anything about the automations. And here we are, a system that allows you to automate, orchestrate, shift your responsibilities to a computer system, and at the same time leverage a highly scalable system. That's very important because if we look at our competition, they have good products, no doubt. However, where they are lacking is that foundation that we started with. We just thought that we could do it better. And I think we did. So prior to Flowrunner, the business we were in, and we're still in it, was the business of what Backendless is known for now. If you ask someone who in the industry and knows us, they would say that's a system to build apps. And that's true. So we've been in that business for quite some time. But as the whole industry of app development was evolving, and at one point it kind of took that turn into the whole no-code space, which I think was a mistake for the industry in general, because it's a wrong turn. The whole idea that app development should be democratized is nonsense. It's complete nonsense, because every single thing should be done by professionals. Otherwise, it becomes junk, right? So the whole app development is kind of veering into no code. And along with that comes AI. And of course, it's fairly straightforward to connect the dots and say, okay, well, now you don't have to be a professional programmer to build apps. As long as you can put two sentences together that describe what you want, an app's going to be built. And with that, there is an explosion of all kinds of startups and companies, and anyone who was already in the game tries to go that direction, which turns the whole app development scene into a commodity. Because starting like in the most primitive sense with templates that Wix publishes, you're on a construction company or a boutique store or whatever, there is a pre-built template that you can quickly use to build your own website. It makes perfect sense. But if that's what we do, I lose interest very quickly. We look at what's going on in the industry. We look at the promise of AI, and it appears that with artificial intelligence and automation, it would be an interesting problem to solve how that can replace humans at either very primitive tasks to some very complex tasks. And in order to do this, with everything that we had to offer at that point, which is just all the foundational stuff, the building blocks such as database, security, files, users, sending out messages, and so on, you need to have that foundation. So we started working on automating, creating an automation system. Whenever you look into automation, it is one thing to create a system where you can describe algorithmically what your automation should do. Like, okay, go check email, get a message, analyze it, respond, categorize, whatever. Like, just you create the flow chart. That's automation. And on top of this, there is a system that needs to kind of coordinate how things occur. You know, if you have a node and there are two branches going out, that two things need to happen in parallel, or you have multiple requests coming in to wake up triggers, instances need to be created and some of them need to wait on that. So there's a whole area of orchestration. Basically creating an engine that sort of like an orchestra conductor, just say, okay, now you're playing, now you pause, now you guys all together do your strings thing, right? And then that's probably the most challenging part, is creating a solid orchestration engine that has enough features that would allow one to model a real world scenario. Okay. For example, when you go, let's say you're buying a car and you talk to the sales guy and he keeps running to the sales manager. It's like, sign here and we have a deal. And it's like, no, this is not good enough. He runs back. So multiple things are at play. And then once he's like, okay, here we're good. Here's my signature. Then he runs to the finance guy who like starts printing out all the paperwork. You sign here, and then it goes then to delivery manager that they need to wash the car and put the temporary license plates. Like, there is like a number of things that are happening, and some of them could be going on in parallel. So to model that scenario in the computer system, you need to have this kind of conductor that will just coordinate all those things, because it's very rarely things are just linear. Things are happening in parallel. So a good orchestration engine would allow you to model those use cases. So we start working on that, and then start kind of weaving AI into it, where you can delegate your automation to the system. And that's one of the most important things with Flowrunner. Is it's a system where you do not necessarily prescribe your algorithm, a set of steps, but you can delegate to it and say, look, you make the decision for me. You decide what's going to happen next, and just get it done. I don't care how. You can have like multiple agents talking to each other. And we spent about a good year and a half, maybe 2 years, just working through all kinds of issues, just figuring out not necessarily the back end stuff, like how it's going to work, but the front end, the user experience. We'll learn that if you start exposing your system to no coders, it does have a fairly strong condition on the way things look. Okay. Sometimes it gets ridiculous. So we learned that, and figuring out the best possible UX to get those things done took also quite some. And then my development team hates me for this, but quite often, like, we would just get it done. It's like it's all working, and then an idea comes, like, we can actually make it better. But along with that comes a set of changes. So we've been through all of this, and here we are, a system that allows you to automate, orchestrate, shift your responsibilities to a computer system, and at the same time leverage a highly scalable system. And that's very important, because if we look at our competition, the competitors that we have, they have good products, no doubt. However, where they are lacking is that foundation that we started with. Like, if you look at Zapier's tables, okay, it is as primitive as like Wix collections, which is literally just like a table, no relationships, no indexes, no constraints, no business logic around it, no additional events that you can tap into. It's just good enough to create blogging system. um, but we have it, and I think it's a huge advantage. And not only that, like, we have file storage, because storing files, it's important. Zapier calls it interfaces, an ability to create kind of UI interfaces. We do have our own UI system as well. Although all of that I think it's gonna be going away, just because I think in the future the concept of user interfaces will change significantly. They will become conversational. Like, a good example of this, which is very different than the way it is implemented, but it's quite effective. Like, I switched to an insurance company called Lemonade. It's so different, where their interface on the app and the web interface on their website, it's literally a chat. You're just chatting with your agent that just knows everything about you. Getting a quote, asking a billing question, updating policy, all of that is done through a chat. It's great compared to other insurance companies that I was a customer of. It's quite different and quite refreshing, to be honest. And because of this, just because they just don't have an army of people that work there, I think it's fairly small company. They actually can offer very competitive rates. The rates they quote, and they have really good rating. It's not like just some company that's ignore you, I think. So interfaces will change. They will become more conversational. It's going to be agentic this, agentic that, 100%. Therefore, the concept of user interfaces that automation companies provide, including our own, that will be changing somewhat to be more of a chat-driven UX to interface with the automation.
Why didn't you use existing tools? Like, why did you decide you had to make your own automation tool? Because there were, like, you gave examples, Zapier. Maybe it wasn't meeting your standard, but like, what specifically was it about the existing tools that made you decide, I'm going to build this myself?
For several reasons. Number one, all the existing tools that we looked at, they did not have AI in its core. AI was sort of like slapped on top, and I did not want an automation system where AI is an afterthought. It needs to be baked right into the architecture. Second, I saw a number of deficiencies with those systems. With Zapier, for instance, one, it's limited where it has to start with a trigger, and it's quite expensive. So we wanted to make it easier, and we wanted to make it where an automation, or whatever your automation, could could mimic a real world scenario as closely as possible. And second is we just wanted to be in control for how it works. And even with that, you could have taken some open source implementation and just adapt it to your own requirements. True, but we just thought that we could do it better. And I think we did.
How did you integrate AI into it instead of just like every other tool?
That's a great question. So artificial intelligence in Flowrunner is inside of that actual system itself, where even if you're not using it on the surface, okay, so it controls of when certain things need to happen. It provides that dynamic decision making process internally into the core engine of Flowrunner. So think about it, there is this core that, black box that you submit your flow chart and it starts executing. And then inside of your flow chart, it could be just basic things like check email. If it is, of a sales inquiry, put a certain tag in Gmail and just that's it. Which, by the way, is interesting because if you use Gmail, there's a finite set of rules that you can apply to tag something. If the subject starts with, ends with, or contains certain words, if it is from specific address or pattern, if the body mentions some words, right? But what if you want to apply a tag sales inquiry or opportunity based on the actual content? It may not reference specific words, but the overall content could be a sales inquiry.
Yeah.
Or partnership inquiry or support or junk, right? So using AI, by the way, to categorize your emails and apply the tags that would make sense, and then let Gmail just sort it out in the appropriate folders. They don't have full tags. It's a great use case for AI. So let's say that you have a flow that doesn't use AI. It's just pure algorithmic. You submit it into that black box. And inside of that black box, there is AI that assists the core engine in the decision making. And as it runs, as time goes on, it just becomes smarter and smarter for how things should run. That's one. But of course, there is quite a lot of AI on the surface. Like you can easily create an AI agent, an assistant, or use AI in the conditions. Like there is a condition block, and in that condition block, you can basically delegate to AI to answer a question that would have to result in a yes or no answer.
I see. So let it make the choice, and
Right,
based on
exactly.
that answer,
Exactly. For example,
execute differently.
let's take a very basic example, which we can just implement on the fly. You're building a moderation system that needs to moderate images that are uploaded. Like, let's say you're building some kind of system with UGC, user generated content, and people upload images, and you want to protect your system from junk. With Flowrunner, you can use the condition block, take that image and delegate to AI with a question. Does it contain any violence? Is it appropriate for this type of app? And just describe what your app is. And AI will respond saying yes or no. And then your flow will just execute depending on what AI determined your content to be. And it doesn't have to be image. It could be text based or a combination of the content. Creating that kind of moderation system would be rather hard given that you take any kind of word and there are just so many different ways to write it out. Using @ for A's or number 3 for letter E,
Or
and so
spelling
on.
mistakes, or
Or
yeah,
spelling
like
mistakes, or just putting dashes after every letter. Delegating these kind of things to AI saves a lot of time as you build your solution. Like in our case, it was rather recently. We needed to parse emails. So basically, an automation reads emails, and that email has basically it's like a form submission type of email that has name and just the name of the person. And they really wanted to split name into first name, last name, which you would think should be fairly simple to do it by writing code for it. But no, there are so many different ways that names could be spelled with apostrophes, with some middle word, with dashes. Like, how do you really split that into first letter? So, but AI can do it in a very straightforward manner. So yeah, the amount of AI that is on the surface for the user to start using is huge in Flowrunner. And then we're adding some additional things where it will be even better.
And that's not the case for most tools you've found.
It's everyone's getting there to a degree. Like with Zapier just announced their AI assistants that I think available only in the enterprise package somehow. Well, yeah, Zapier is interesting because they are, I think, being pressured significantly to. It seems this way. I don't know. It's just hypothetically speaking. That's whatever investors they have, they're asking to show more revenue. So they're taking this enterprise route. And I think the latest announcements that they have done talk about AI assistants and enterprise package, like in the same sentence, pretty much everywhere you look. Nathan has it also the whole agentic thing, which I believe they looks a lot like LangChain, but I don't know. Well, it is open source, so it would be fairly easy to verify. And but it is so technical. If you're not a developer, figuring it out just from the UX perspective, it's not the code is everywhere, but the way things are phrased, the way things are configured, the way you're connecting everything, it is very, very technical, and where a non-technical person would struggle. But the general trajectory is that all major automation systems, everyone is focusing on adding AI. And it makes perfect sense, of course, that is inevitable. But the way we're looking at it is that I believe, at least initially, people who will benefit from Flowrunner the most are going to be people who will just not even know how to create a flow, okay? Because they will be focusing on the actual net benefit
On the outcome
that the automation provides. So our strategic goal is to make it as simple as possible for someone, business owner, person in charge, whoever, to start taking advantage of the automations without even knowing anything about the automations.
That's the dream. What are some examples you can give of use cases that you have where Flowrunner or automations that you've built really made a difference, like really had a big impact? Maybe for people who have a sense of, okay, I can automate stuff, but what is the scale of the impact of that even look like?
Sure. Sure. Well, lately we've been working on, and we actually see the results from automations that focus on content delivery to improve and help companies and businesses with reach in the social media space and just with their basic grassroots marketing. And some of these automations are fairly simple, although there is a level of sophistication. Like, for instance, one of the bakeries here in Dallas, they have an automation that consists of two things, actually three things. Once a month, an automation wakes up and creates a content calendar. Okay. Content calendar consists of topics for every single day. And those topics, there is one for X, Twitter, and another one for the blog. And then they go in tandem. So if it is, let's say, a weekend, then both Twitter and blog will talk about like enjoying, pastries and sweets that they make for the weekend, like, Sunday brunch or having a picnic, and this is what you would pack. And so it tries to coincide with the activities that are envisioned that would be happening during that time frame. Second thing is, if there are any holidays in that month, then the content calendar becomes aware of those holidays, or is aware. And then, let's say, a week before the holiday, it starts tweeting about some kind of specials or products that would elevate the experience during that holiday. Same thing goes on like 3 days before and then the day before. There are some interesting things in there, like, for instance, when it wakes up on month 2 and generates the content ideas, it goes back to see if there's any duplication with month 1. Don't want to kind of sound repetitive. You want to stay with original content. And then there are some technical approaches that come from more advanced programming background, like, for instance, creating embeddings and then performing searches on similarity. And then if it happens to be similar, which is indicated by a certain number, then it goes back and regenerates the content ideas for the days when there are overlaps. So this way, with additional tries or attempts, it builds up a content calendar for the following month. Then, once the content calendar is there and it's stored in the database, in the Canvas database, which provides a way to store that information, then another automation wakes up daily and checks, what the topic is for today, picks the topic, writes up the content, and it has its own guidelines for what that content should look like. Then it then generates an image in the theme of that topic, and then puts together a blog article and publishes to their website. It actually is instructed to maintain SEO. So it basically, instructions for the content generator include in the prompts, it says that the titles, the main title, and the headline headings and the content need to be SEO optimized for these terms. And then the third one does something very similar, but for X. And it just works, and it's great. And in addition to that, planned improvement is that a fourth automation wakes up once a day, scans local publishing sites, newspapers, magazines, event planning sites, and so on. Basically, just does a search to see what's going on in Dallas on this day, and then sends it to AI to summarize, like, if there is there a general theme of the activities that is happening in Dallas that may have some kind of relationship to the business of that bakery. And if AI says, yes, it looks like, these are the events going on, and this is how the bakery's products could have a play for these events, and it generates the actual additional topic for the blog and for X, and injects it into the calendar. And then when those agents wake up, they see that and they generate the content specifically for things that were not originally known, but kind of happen. So this way it becomes a very dynamic system for content generation. But the beauty of this is it's not built for that specific customer. Okay. It's a general purpose automation with all the prompts that it has, 100% applicable to any industry, to any kind of company, whether it's product or service, with parts of it being substituted to tune that content generation to really any industry. Those substitution parts include actual industry, what the product or service are about, the geographic area, indicators, which is basically just a bulleted list, links of all the products, so it can get that information and analyze it and become smarter. And then that's it. So with you can reconfigure it for a roofing company, and you will have a content manager that talks about roof installations year round. It would be an interesting experiment, because I cannot imagine like 5 different posts on roof installations of how they would be different, but I'm pretty sure it would do something. Yeah.
If there's someone who wanted to test out this automation, is there somewhere that they could find it and purchase for
Yeah.
themselves, or a tutorial or something?
In the next 2 weeks, there will be that automation is going to show up in our marketplace, so you can just install it. And then I think we're preparing a case study that will be on our website and blog, and possibly a couple of videos as well, because it's such a general purpose that really anyone can benefit from.
So what other fun things are you cooking up? Are there any other automations on the menu?
Yeah, so right now the two things that we're focusing on, one is the outreach, the content generation, and then there are so many other things that we're thinking about improving it with, including Instagram posting. Like, for instance, one thing that we noticed is that, and I talked to multiple small business owners. Everyone is just going around, and they're taking pictures and videos of their products. They like taking pictures of the finished projects, like if you're doing, I don't know, landscaping, right? So everyone sits on a portfolio of images and videos that demonstrate what you do. But somehow everyone is so busy, and then that's understandable. They just don't have time to properly format it, write up the description, and just post it to your Facebook or Instagram. And as a result, you're just lagging on being up there and just showing that you're current and that you're busy and whatnot. So here, another automation would be where you just have either a separate app or just kind of upload destination where you just keep sending all the images that you have to some repository, okay? And then the automation wakes up, grabs an image, sees, analyzes it, and you can tune it to say that, look, it really needs to coincide again with either current weather, because some businesses may want to show, like if it's raining a lot, you may want to start promoting product that helps you with that, or whatever. You get an idea. So it basically grabs an image, analyzes it, sees that it's a perfect fit for what it needs to post today, and just does the posting automatically. So have this basically smart content manager that just is there for you all the time. And that's one thing. Second, that's basically content delivery. But you want to engage. You want to see that people are liking, commenting, sharing, and you want to promote that type of activity and reaction. Therefore, if someone commented, you want to kind of like their comment or respond and so on. So automating those parts is also important. And there it becomes valuable because it becomes really kind of a not just one way but a two-way street with your followers. That's one thing. The second is the automations related to sales, like basically that virtual sales assistant that does prospecting, thorough analysis, drafting an outreach email or LinkedIn message, sending it out, waiting for the response, getting the response, and then just engaging in the conversation, and then proper handoff to whoever needs to schedule a demo, or it could actually schedule a demo for you as well. But if it comes to a phone call, I don't think it is there yet to have a completely automated system to do it. You can have a more or less meaningful phone conversation with AI. At the very minimum, OpenAI released the real-time API, and it's actually pretty cool. It's their model does not transcribe a voice to text. It is voice first. So when you talk to it, it's instant. It understands what you're talking about just by analyzing your voice, and it can respond in voice. So with that, if you just hook something like 11 Labs to that system, you can do just fantastic. Although with 11 Labs, it has to come from text, which will slow down. If it's voice first, at this point, you would have to use one of the voice talents by OpenAI, and you will be able to train your. Like I think 11 Labs, as good as they are, with the advances that OpenAI is making, they really need to be concerned about their business because you can train 11 Labs to have AI talk in your own voice, which is great. But I don't think that OpenAI is just like, oh no, we're not going to do that. They will totally do that, and they will make it real time. So once they make it real time, that's it. You can just have a sales rep in your own voice conducting conversations.
Yeah, it's insane. I was thinking one use case that could be interesting. I don't know necessarily how the trigger would be for an automation, but like say you're working on a pitch deck or some sort of like presentation and maybe there's current events evolving, but there's like new things coming out that are relevant to your company. So maybe if you're working in manufacturing, there's more news about some disaster in manufacturing that your product could have helped. So if it can like pull articles or case studies or examples, and then based on knowing what your business is about, put it together into your presentation slides or your pitch deck or whatever, like to help maybe with companies that are startups or something. Because I know there's auto formatting, like whatever, PowerPoint stuff, but those aren't contextually like aware of what you're trying to do and how to be more persuasive or more clear and succinct in your messaging. So having an agent that would help you actually write, but also create the visuals for it and pull like statistics that are relevant and recent would be super helpful because it takes a lot of work manually to do.
Yeah, yeah. I like it. I think for those businesses where that really matters, that would be extremely, extremely helpful. And it's not too complex to do it.
Like one good statistic could convince someone that your business is worth investing in. If it shows
Yes.
like there was this huge disaster in Nepal and this thing happened, it could have been entirely avoided and it would have cost them $500,000 to fix. But if they had this, and just keep getting examples of real things. But that's somewhat difficult to do yourself if you're just, on Google because you're limited by what search
You want
results
you
come
want
up.
you want something that just constantly does work for you,
Yeah.
your
Like it
behalf.
could just be every day refreshing its knowledge base on recent events.
Like for instance, for someone who's an Uber driver or Lyft or whatever, like just ride sharing. Okay. Whenever you are in that app as a driver, it will tell you where the congested areas are that have higher payouts. If there's a game going on and it's about to end, and a lot of people are requesting, but it's more reactionary. You can sort of predict that it's going to happen if you know, and head out that way and be one of the first to pick up passengers, or just rely on the app. But the app will tell you that it's going on only when it starts happening. Okay. If you have an AI, just constantly on the lookout for things that are going on, okay, in your geographic area, you could start benefiting from it by moving closer to the area where the congestion of potential customers is. How do you do this, right? You basically go to X and you start running X APIs on whatever the trending hashtags are in your geographic area. And then based on that, you start figuring out if they are related to a specific geographic area for some other activities that are happening, like parades, games, concerts, whatever. And then it notifies you, it's like, oh, head out there because there's going to be a lot of customers and Uber is more than likely going to be paying more. So that's how one could just, like, from a very non scientific approach, can actually, see an increase in the pay.
Yeah, even there's obviously news channels, right? Or
Yeah.
people, there's channels on YouTube that give you the latest in AI news, the latest in gardening technology. I don't know, the latest in whatever niche you're interested in.
Mhm.
But that's still someone curating and finding the news. So if you have an AI assistant that you just tell it what specific industry or niche you're looking at news for, it can just go find that for you and deliver it daily. So it's like your own curation of news based on your own interests. And you could cater that specifically to your business. Again, like the content stuff. Find news in your field that you can just make posts about, and you're the first to make posts about it because you're on top of
Absolutely.
it.
Now, I'm glad you brought up news. We do have a tutorial in Flowrunner that is called "Build Your First Flow." Okay, and that flow is very simple. It's literally 4 steps, and it goes like this: you use a block to make a request to a service that is called News API. It's either newsapi.org or newsapi.com, one of them. And the way this works is that you provide a query, literally just a text query for a subject that you're interested in. Okay. You can identify a geography, and geography is really a country, or you can do it worldwide. And that the identifying source trims it down to specific publications that are available in that country. And then using that API request, you get a list of articles that showed up in the news over a period of time for the query that you specified. So in that animation, you get that response, you send the results of that response to AI, and you basically ask to determine the sentiment, whether it's positive or neutral or negative, for the subject that you identified. And then you just log it somewhere or send an email. So that's kind of the first automation that one builds in Flowrunner. Now, where things could get interesting is, let's say you are a niche investor, right? You're investing into whatever, corn, lumber, quantum computing, doesn't matter, right? Information is everything in invest. If you can be ahead of it, then you're certainly more than likely to make some money. So one thing that you can do is just kind of do this never-ending analysis on to understand where the sentiment is going for company, industry, a specific subject, and so on. And based on that, kind of use that as one of the factors for your trading decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Although, they say in investment, they say that if it hits the news, it's you're already
It's
too
too
late.
late. Yeah. I just had another thought of a automation that would be cool to have in daily life and in business. So there's things like little note-taking things that can attend your Zoom meetings or your Google Meet and note take, whatever, dictate. I've now seen from someone who has like a little device you can actually bring with you, and it like if you hit record, so you can use it for in-person meetings, it will transcribe and then give you the summary at the end of actionable things you have to do, or send an email to so and so afterwards, summary, blah blah blah. But I was thinking, like, if you're in a meeting and you get a question about something that was discussed weeks ago, or maybe it's like a specific number in your business that you don't have off the top of your head, it would be so cool if you had a little agent that already has your database of knowledge on your business and previous transcriptions from all your previous meetings. So if a question comes up, and it could just like suggest the number for you or suggest the answer for you based on prior knowledge, because maybe it's not coming to like there's so many times where be like, oh, I don't have the information in front of me right now, but I'll get back to you.
What really should happen is that the note taker apps in those calls should have should have voice, like it can raise hand,
Yeah.
right? Like I have them to say, and actually, like I heard this came up. Here's an answer, and it should be able to share screen because it should have its own screen where it can actually, like, if they're discussing some whatever, but you can quickly create a diagram and say, I have something. Here's what I think you're discussing
Yeah.
as an additional data point. And it's like, okay, I'm going back to just
Cited
my.
source. Yeah. It's like Jamie from Joe Rogan's
Yeah,
podcast. You know that
exactly.
guy?
Yeah, we just quickly pull something up and they have it right on the screen. Exactly. It needs to be the
Yeah.
Jamie note taking app. Absolutely.
Yeah. But it's like even better than a note-taking app because it's not just all your notes, it's also actual data from maybe it's your social media analytics. Like if you're having a consultation with a client and you want to go over their numbers for whatever the performance of different things or maybe performance of ad campaigns, it can just instantly pull up
Yeah,
data on a question and have that for you. Like it's
yeah.
like exactly
And you,
what you'd want in an assistant.
and you as the owner of that app, whoever that guides the meeting, should have like control over how aggressive it is on injecting its own
Yeah.
voice into the conversation.
Yeah, that would be so cool though. And I was just thinking again, like
Yeah,
there's
minimum, we should be able to use the chat pod. Like it just like
yeah, have a chat that just says,
right.
"Hey, like here's an answer to that question."
Exactly.
And then has a link you can click just later to review the citation it has or whatever. And also I was
That's
just
brilliant.
thinking there's a whole movement for creating a second brain. This has been around for years where you anytime you have a meeting, anytime you learn something new, any interesting or any piece of information that you might later need, you write it down and you add it to like some database of information. Usually people would use like Notion or Obsidian. Obsidian's cool. I've tried it. It's just a manual input that's annoying, but there's like a whole productivity community of people around this concept of building a second brain so that anytime you need to reference that thing, maybe it's like a gift for someone, or maybe it's a concept you learned about with like, I don't know, blood sugar or something. Like you can go back, search for it and find it. And the cool thing about Obsidian is it creates like a web of, I don't know if you've seen Obsidian before, but you create a new note and it creates like a little node. So there's like a visual graph where, so let's say you create a page called like
Like a mind map.
trees. Yeah, it's like a mind map. So if you create a page called trees and you write about trees and then you mention a new page, like with just the formatting, you could put two like square brackets, create a new page called apples. And then now there's a new node called apples and you see that there's a link between them. So when you hover, you see all the links attached to it. So you kind of see the connections between your different information you've collected over time. I thought it was really good for diving into it. Like, I don't know, when I was designing my little healthcare app, I would like take notes on different things and, whatever, organize. But if you could inject AI into that and have an AI agent that can access your second brain and like you can tell it the information, because the manual input is the most annoying part. So if you say, hey, add this to my second brain, and it's like a grocery list, or it could be like an article about something, and then it can like auto sort by your categories where to put it, and then it can use that as its own database for later when you have like a meeting. And I don't know, like just thinking about how you can put all the information in one place would be so cool.
Totally. And I think it's only a matter of time before all those note-taking apps, the ones that inject themselves into the calls, start doing this. It's only a matter of because what is it? Notetaker.ai. Which one? I think I use notetaker.ai. One of those. I don't remember the name. It can already inject its own things into Google Meet calls.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What right now is so primitive. It's like, This is about to end. This is what I gathered. If you need to say, it's like slash note taker.
How hard would it be to build that yourself? Like if you had a database of information, could you build an AI agent that like pulls from
Yeah,
it and gives you
well,
stuff?
absolutely. Absolutely. And then there are standards now that are emerging to make it easier. Like the whole MCP, which is what Anthropic came up with it, OpenAI announced that they also support it. Google came up with their own A2A, like agent to agent. But the whole thing is being standardized to enable communication between LLM and various tools out there. So if that storage, let's say if it goes the MCP route, if there is an MCP server that's sitting in front of that storage that opens it up for LLM to query things, then that's one way to do it. Alternatively, you can just create some like a function calling tool that is exposed to AI to grab data from. So no technical challenges today to expose the data that you're capturing in one of those systems to make AI aware of it. There are no obstacles.
Yeah. And I know AI is particularly good at recognizing patterns. So it'd be really interesting to see what insights it could pull from your brain dump of information or like all these analytics you've accumulated and everything. Like, could
But
it
not
pull?
only that, think about let's continue note taking idea, right? Which is I think it's quite fascinating because if you are on a call, and let's
Yeah.
say you are on a call with a prospect that you do not know very well, you're trying to sell, or you're doing a sales presentation, having an AI system that's analyzing not only what was said, but facial expressions, how people react, to the things that AI knows are important to you, and you want to correlate it to the reactions, and then create sort of a mental image of how it thinks the call went,
Yeah.
and the things that it recommends for you to follow up on based on the things that it learned of what was said, what was done, how people reacted. Then your effectiveness as a presenter, as a not just presenter, as a person who conducts this business, will go up significantly.
Yeah. I think there are now features like I know Firefly's AI or whatever the one I use on the more premium version. I think it can tell you what words you commonly use that like are filler words or like how to improve your presentation or maybe like it can tell the overall sentiment from the other person and give you tips on like if it was a sales call like how to better improve your delivery or something. But I think the facial recognition aspect would be super cool.
Absolutely. Like you know about the micro expressions, do you? There was a series about that British dude. The actor is British, who worked for FBI. He was an expert on micro expressions, and I think like applying that kind of theory in practice on sales calls or just any kind of business meetings, that would be just fascinating.
Yeah, there's so much potential. There's like a bubble of what we're able to actually do, and then there's like a gap between what we're able to do and what we even thought of doing. The actual potential capability of what technology we have is so high, but like we're almost lagging in our ideas for how to use it. And then there's the execution part as well. That's the biggest roadblock, right?
Right. That's the issue because ideas keep on coming. In order to make an idea a reality, there is a time that needs to be spent to make it happen, the implementation, testing, and so on, right? And while you're committing yourself to make this happen, a dozen of other ideas come along
Yeah.
that sound even more exciting. So we just keep bringing up these ideas, but
I think this is exactly where no code tried to come in. Reduce that friction of execution and make it easier to go from idea to product, but it's not quite what it's
no,
promising to be.
no, it never happened. It
Yeah.
never happened. Of course, if you talk to people who are die-hard fans of no code, they will think they will try to prove you wrong. I think newer tools they have a lot more potential. I'm becoming a big fan of Replit, but it really helps to know some basics of coding. Things are structured, what would be the right way of doing it, and just recognizing that where it went wrong.
Even how to prompt it.
Even how to, yeah, exactly. Like for instance, I was doing a page for a demo for Flowrunner, and I needed an effect where, as I'm entering something in an input field, the data is replicated in another input field. And as I was doing it, I would just kept on catching myself thinking, like, how would a person that is not technical enough describe those things in a way where the system would just instantly know what I'm talking about?
I mean, there's a level where if it was sophisticated enough, it could even think of that idea itself, but that's so far beyond what we have. Like the UX isn't built in necessarily into Replit or any of these tools. So if you don't have an understanding of what you want it to look like if you take someone who knows nothing, especially if you look at graphic design, like a client who tells their designer, make it pop. And it's like, what does that mean? Like, what does make it pop mean? Does it mean make the font bigger? Does it mean make the colors contrast more? Does it mean add more white space to like dry? Like, there's no level of fidelity to their thought. They can't express it. They know that it's not right because they're like, oh, I don't like it, but you need to make it pop more. And it's like, what does that mean? So if you don't have the technical knowledge of building an app in this case or building a product, you don't have the ability to articulate what's wrong with it or how to fix it.
When sometimes it's not just building a product, it's just understanding that your perception is composed of micro reactions to so many little different things: margins, paddings, borders, shadows, glow effects, size of font, contrast of colors, consistency of font sizes across the board. So many little things go into the overall picture that creates an impression. And just a regular person would not have any idea
Yeah.
about all of
Even
that.
the 8 pixel, like the rule of going by the 8 pixels so that when you keep going in half smaller and smaller, you're not left with like a decimal of a pixel. Like if you go by like 10 grid, you go
Yeah.
to 5, then you go to 2.5 pixel, and then you go like the smaller, it starts creating problems. So usually in UI, you like as a designer, you'd probably design with an 8 pixel, like whatever grid factor, because it's just easier for people later to like resize things, and you have consistent padding between elements, and then you have like, the layout is, there's just like rules. You don't necessarily recognize if you're not in that world, but they exist. And that's why
Mhm.
things feel comfortable to look at. But if you're like completely inexperienced and you're designing an interface, if you try to make YouTube from scratch just from memory, as especially as someone who doesn't know what they're doing, it's gonna look terrible.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Even the
absolutely.
rounded corners, like they make such a big difference.
I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. As I've seen so many interfaces where they really look like they were designed by developers. Everything should be done by professionals to make it look and work right. It's
Yeah.
just,
But I think it's self-evident. Like over time, like, anyone could build with no code. That doesn't mean anyone's gonna buy a product that's made that's no code because you can tell that there's a
or it will
difference.
have any longevity and it will just work beyond you getting first 100 custom systems, no code systems. When you start designing your database, right, you have 0 records and you start creating your database, you just keep on adding columns. So imagine, like a Google Sheet that has 200 columns. If that's your database, of course, when you have, 1, 5, 10 records, things load up quickly. Once you have 100,000 records and you have 200 columns in it, then you'll be writing a support post saying, all of a sudden my database queries are slow. You look at it and it's like, duh, doesn't look like you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I have a personal experience where I was making like a time tracking thing, just a simple thing in Replit for fun. And for some reason, I think I left the timer running without realizing, because I deployed it, I was testing it, and I come back like 2 days later, and it like charged me $10 of like usage or like, and I was probably because the timer was left running. But I was like, oh my god, I didn't even think to put something in there where I
It
don't
could have
know.
been much, much worse.
Yeah, but it was so stupid.
Well, you just didn't know better.
Yeah, there you go.
When everyone is unemployed and automations do everything, that's going to be a different story.
Yeah. Well, until then, the world belongs to those who know what they're doing.
And when it happens, the world will belong to oligarchs. We'll talk about it. But the
Yeah.
conspiracy of, great 12 minds of Silicon Valley. How to conquer this world.
Well, thanks again for the lovely conversation and all the knowledge you've imparted on us.
My pleasure.